Hello everybody, welcome back to another election prediction video. This time we're doing a Senate prediction for mid-October. So again, some races have tightened up, some race ratings have changed since then, since my last Senate prediction. But right now we're just going to set up all the safe Republican states and then the safe Democratic states before we get into this. All right, so let's just talk about Virginia. Hung Kao is running a terrible campaign. He has gaffe after gaffe at this point. I think he's going down to Tim Kaine. I think Tim Kaine is just going to clean his clock in this race. I don't think he has a shot. And Senate Republicans, no, he doesn't have a shot. They're not giving him enough money to even have a chance in Virginia, so it's safe blue. Tim Kaine's going to beat him. In New Mexico, Republicans really are kind of giving up on this race as well. They're not investing as much resources here. Let's see if we could take a look in New Mexico polling because I'm kind of curious. D plus 10 right now. Yeah, and in the more recent polls, he's started to get even bigger lead, Heinrich. So this race is a safe blue one. I don't think it'll be competitive. Minnesota was kind of interesting. We did have one poll out here saying she's not going to win by 20 or something, but I highly doubt that. I don't think it's going to be a D plus 11 victory. I think this guy, Royce Weiss, he's such a terrible candidate. He said something about World War II and how the bad guys won the war or something. So he's implying that the Allies were the bad guys. So I don't know what alternate reality he comes from, but I think Klobuchar is going to crush him in this race. I don't think it's going to be a likely blue margin. I would be really shocked if she underperformed that badly here. I think she's going to probably win this race by about 15 points as of right now. I don't think he has a shot. He's just such a bad candidate. It's really funny how bad of a candidate he is. But we'll take a look at Maryland next. And so far, the race is turning against Larry Hogan. He used to lead early on in this race, but I kind of always felt like it was going to collapse. And now also Brooks is starting to run away with it. And she's even leading by a 9% average. Recent poll had her winning by double digits. It's possible Hogan just loses by over 10, but I'm going to be generous to him. I think he gets this race within a likely blue margin, but also Brooks beats him by about 9%. So he barely avoids losing by a safe blue margin, which would be pretty embarrassing for him, being such a popular former governor in the state. But that's how polarization works in this day and age. You can't win a D plus 30 state as a Republican for Senate. It's just not possible anymore. Maybe back like a decade ago was possible, but not in this era. Not in this era at all. Now we're going to take a look at Nebraska, and I also think polarization is going to come down hard on the independent candidate who's running a very centrist campaign, but a very populist one at the same time. Thing is, a lot of these polls were sponsored by Dan Osborne, and he's not hitting 50% except in one poll right here. And then we had internals by the Republican, and she's only winning by 6 or 7. So I really think there's a race here. I don't think it's a safe Republican state. I think we're going to see this race probably Fisher winning by about 7 to 8%. I think about 7 right now. I think I would say at that margin. I think Osborne does well at Nebraska's second. I think he wins Nebraska's first district. Again, he's running quite a stellar campaign. I've seen a lot of his ads, and I think they're pretty compelling. So thing is, though, polarization is going to kick in, and those undecideds are going to go to Fisher at the end of the day. So all these polls showing him up, those undecideds are going to go for the Republican here. That's usually how it works in these safer states. So I have this as a likely Republican state. Fisher wins by about 7. In Montana, I don't think Tim Sheahy's going to win by like 10 or something like that. I think it'll be a bit closer than that. I think Sheahy's going to end up winning by about 6 as of right now. So that's an improvement for Sheahy from a lean Republican to likely Republican margin. Again, the Republican internals agree with the New York Times Siena here that Sheahy's up by about 7 to 8 points. So it was always an uphill battle for John Tester. He won a lot of close calls here, but he's finally gotten unlucky enough to face a stronger candidate besides Matt Rosendale here. So just because Shea's non-controversial, he's in an R plus 17 state, he has the advantage right now. I think it's R plus 16 state, something like that. But it's such a Republican state that polarization is just going to kick in here. And Shays already breaching 50% in these polls. So it's really hard to see how John Tester wins unless there's a massive Democratic turnout here and we see a polling error in his favor. So he's quite the underdog. It's not possible he wins, but it's very unlikely as of right now. Going over to Florida, I previously had a prediction before. I'm not sure if I made it into a video that I had Florida as lean Republican, like only a 4-point win for Scott. Right now, I think Scott's probably going to win by about 5. Again, he's an underperformer. I think he's going to trail Trump by about 2 points in Florida. But I think it's going to be a likely Republican state. Again, Republican registration is quite good for Republicans in Florida. They have a million voter advantage, and that's going to kick into the Senate race here, making this not a real competitive race as of right now. If you want to look for a potential upset, take a look at Nebraska because some weird stuff going on in that state with Dan Osborne. He's running an interesting centrist slash populist campaign. In Texas, honestly, Ted Cruz looks weaker and weaker as we go. He lost that debate pretty badly. I saw a lot of clips from it. It did not look good for him. And we had recent polling showing it as a pretty close rate. The Senate Leadership Fund said Cruz was only up one, agreeing with the Morning Consult poll. We had other pollsters showing them below 5 percentage points here, a few of them. There's only been a couple poll, like one done by YouGov, one done by Morris that had him up by about 5. But again, Cruz is an underperformer. In 2018, he was leading the polls by 7. He only won by 3. So he's not a likable guy. That's the big thing here. Even Republican voters don't like him all that much, but they'll still come out and vote for him because he's a Republican at the end of the day. But I think he's only going to win by 3. I think he underperforms Trump by about 2 points. So Trump wins Texas by 5. Allred loses Texas by about 3 to Ted Cruz right now. But it's a lean Republican state, so if Democrats want a chance at keeping the Senate, they need to win Texas. It's probably the tipping point state for Senate control if Kamala Harris wins the 2024 election. This race will be very important for Senate control because if they get 50 seats and they win the presidency, then they already have Senate control. So Texas right now is in the Republicans' corner. Arizona and Nevada are up next. Let me take a look at them. Again, Nevada, Republicans are pretty much giving up on this race. They're not really putting a lot of funds in here because they kind of see it's a lost cause. Again, Brown, he's quite distant from Rosen. Rosen's running a pretty good campaign right now. Her favorables are pretty high. And a lot of these polls have her up by a pretty sizable margin here. I think she's going to end up winning Nevada by about 7 points. That's what I'm kind of feeling right now. Just looking at the average of these polls, just weighing it out here. I think she's going to get the undecideds on her side here in these polls. And even the Morning Consult poll, I up by 15, which is a bit of an outlier. But just taking a look here, I don't think she's going to win by 9 like the average is saying. I think the delta won't be that big between Harris and Rosen. So I think she wins by about 7. That's kind of what it's looking like right now. And it kind of makes sense. In Arizona, again, Arizona's interesting. We have polls showing Trump up here by 2 points, and we have polls with Gallego, that's how you say his name, up by about 7.4. So there's a pretty big delta between Harris and Gallego. He's winning a lot of those undecided. So it's possible those undecideds break for Harris in that presidential race. It's really possible she wins this state, even though polls have her down, because there's a lot of undecideds in that presidential race. That's something to keep an eye on. But back to the Senate race. Lake is pretty much cooked here. I just don't see how she wins. Even in the best case scenario, I think she loses. She's such a bad candidate. She really did not do well in that debate. She appeared confused multiple times. She called IVF UVF or something. Again, she's just a very radical candidate. She's pretty much a sore loser after she lost in 2022, and voters have not forgotten that. They're still holding it against her here in this race. And Gallego is on track to win by about 6, I'd say. I don't think he's going to win by 7. So that's a likely blue Senate seat. And now we have the 4 Rust Belt states, which are pretty interesting, honestly. Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania have narrowed up considerably. So we'll go to Michigan first. Again, I think Michigan, out of these 3 Senate seats and the blue wall, I think Michigan's the most likely to be a potential upset for Republicans. Again, it's an open seat. That's why I think that. Again, there's no incumbent here like there is with Bob Casey Jr. and Tammy Baldwin in Wisconsin and Pennsylvania. Slotkin's in an open race. Rogers is fairly non-controversial. Maybe a bit of a boring candidate, but boring usually wins elections if you run it good. You don't run with like a bunch of scandals like Carrie Lake. But as we see, the race has narrowed up a bit with Rogers. So again, he's has a shot here. This is a potential upset for the Senate race, but he hasn't led in any polls lately. And the Senate Leadership Fund internal poll had him actually down by a likely margin. So I think Slotkin's a pretty heavy favorite in this Senate seat as of right now. And she's polling, honestly, pretty well here. She has pretty decently sized leads, but there's something to keep an eye on how those undecideds turn out because Rogers could win them and win this race. But right now, I think Slotkin's the favorite to win. So I have this as a lean blue Senate seat. We're going to take a look at Pennsylvania next. And again, Republicans are putting a lot of money into this race. McCormick's outspending Casey, but it's still not enough. Casey still leads most of these polls here. Senate Leadership Fund had this race as a pretty close race. I think it was about a 2-point lead for Casey, just calling from my memory. But again, Casey usually outpaces Harris by about 3 points or so, 4 points or so in most of these polls. I think he's looking to outpace Harris by about 2 in Pennsylvania. I think the same with Baldwin. I think she outpaces Harris by about 2. So I don't think it's going to be this big delta like polls are suggesting. So I think McCormick and Trump are going to run pretty closely in line with each other, but McCormick going to underperform by a few points. Again, incumbency advantage is a very real thing. It's kind of like a hidden value for the incumbent in a lot of these races. But I think Bob Casey Jr. is still going to end up winning here by about 3.5, I would say. That's kind of what I'm thinking right now. I think it's not going to be this big delta here. I think it's going to be a bit closer than what the polls are suggesting. So McCormick could pull the upset off, especially if Trump wins Pennsylvania by, I would do my math here, like 2.5 points. I think that would be the margin for McCormick to win the Senate's race. If Trump wins by that margin, that would probably be enough for him to hold on and win here. In Wisconsin, we have Hovde v. Baldwin. And again, she said the race is narrowing up and Democrats need to put a lot more money in this race if they want to ensure this race remains safe. But again, we take a look at the polling here. Baldwin's still up. We haven't gotten a poll lately that had Hovde leading. So again, just taking a look at all this data here. She is the incumbent after all. She's not an unpopular one either. Wisconsin typically likes to keep their incumbents, so I'm more inclined to believe she's going to hold on here. And in Ohio, there's been a recent poll here that showed Moreno up yet again. There's been an active vote poll, which I kind of discount. And there's been a morning consult poll, which shows him up. So really, it's all about how the presidential race shakes out. If Trump wins Ohio by 10, Brown's done. I just don't think the delta is going to be big enough between Harris and him for him to win if Harris loses by 10 in Ohio. Even a 9-point win for Trump might spell doom for Brown too. So Harris needs to keep Ohio within like an 8% margin. Any higher than that, Brown's in serious trouble here. And the Senate Leadership Fund poll, that internal poll that came out, again, it had Brown up by a pretty decent margin. It was like 4 points or something like that. So I still think he's a narrow favorite to win. I still think he's got a shot here. He's still a decently popular incumbent. A lot of these polls, he's leading in October, which says a lot for Ohio. So I think Ohio is still a tilt blue state, but very well in my final Senate prediction, or my next Senate prediction, this race could very well change at the end. We could see late breaking momentum for Moreno. He is appearing to have a bit of that, but I still think Brown's going to hold on here. He won close races before. I think he could pull this one off right now, especially because Moreno isn't really the strongest candidate. He isn't really the most popular with women, especially with his abortion comments he's made on the record. So this is a tilt blue race still. I think Brown's still a narrow favorite, but that could change. So I have the Senate going 49 Democrats, 51 Republicans, and Republicans have a 75% chance at winning the Senate. So let me down in the comments below what you think of this map. If you're new to this channel and you haven't subscribed yet, I would highly encourage you to do so, especially if you enjoy political content like this. And thanks so much for watching. I'll see you all in the next one.